All right. I was doing a honeydew project for my own. Ed, you missed the update. I did woodworking today.
Oh.
It's that severe of a situation down here that I actually took tools to wood.
That's a problem.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. Real sicko
What were you doing?
I had to build a cover for this chiller unit for an ice bath that my wife gave me for my birthday. Like a recovery tub thing.
Okay.
And yeah, so I had to, it's like framed 2x4s. It's like a 2x4 box.
Okay.
And I got the roof slanted, but I was going to cut angles on the tops of the vertical joist or vertical posts on the four corners because the front two are slightly higher than the back two, just so the water runs off it, right? Standard stuff. Except I started drilling and like I screwed one in before I had cut the angle. So I was like, screw it. I'll just screw them all in. It's still at an angle. It's still, it's like the roof is bent. So,
I mean, if it lives outside, it's temporary anyway. So,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm going to have to rebuild it in a couple years because it's going to rot, but that's okay. Like, it's really not a big deal.
I mean, I put together a raised bed for my wife's garden, and it was 2 years ago, and it is basically like falling apart. So next spring, we're doing it again. This time she wants to help, and I'm like, cool, because these are very heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at the same time, I do think before we get this going, we have to have a fairly serious conversation. One of the people on this podcast, let's call him Low Tax SE. No, that's too obvious. How about L Speedrun Enjoyer? Just posted something to Blue Sky that if we don't address it, we're all going to be killed. This anonymous person said, quote, Final Fantasy VII is on PS Plus, so I played about an hour and oh my god, it's so bad.
Those are certainly words.
They are, and they're words that, like, I feel like if they're not addressed, at least in passing, they're going to send us bombs.
Stephen Bush is really mad at me about it.
Yeah.
We're gonna be in the Financial Times morning politics newsletter tomorrow.
Really moving up in the world.
I just want to point out that Mr. Ed is sipping a zero sugar Mountain Dew right now.
I am. It's delicious.
It's 8:17 p.m. on a Sunday.
I'm not going to bed till 2. What's the problem?
I really shouldn't talk because I did enjoy a zero sugar Mountain Dew Baja Blast with my Taco Bell lunch today, so... This is Normal Men, a podcast from 4 men who are clinging desperately to normalcy in an era when that's asking a bit too much. I'm George in Charlotte.
In DC, I'm Proctor Malone.
In outer Florida, I'm Low Tax Speedrun Enjoyer.
And I'm Ed in Boston.
The good news on the Final Fantasy thing is that the gamers, capital G gamers, are not going to focus on that because they're too busy being focused on Parker Malloy and her disgraceful furry shaming about Animal Crossing.
What happened there?
Oh,
okay,
can we even explain this without sounding like we're on meth?
We already do. It's fine. Push through it.
Okay, so you've heard of Animal Crossing New Horizons?
Let's pretend I have and just go from there.
It's a game about managing a island full of small anthropomorphic furry creatures. Not like furry as in the subculture. I mean, as in like
literally furry. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Your landlord is like your landlord is a raccoon.
It's a game for children, to be clear.
Yes.
That was Proctor Malone.
All right. It's a game whose design aesthetic is from Nintendo and therefore is child appropriate.
Yes, sure. We'll call it family friendly.
And in fairness, Tom Nook is a terrible businessman. He doesn't even charge you interest.
So somebody designed a mod for this game that makes one of the characters curvier, to use the poster's words. The character is a dog that I guess is female. And this mod gives it larger breasts and a
two breasts, to be clear, not 6 or 8, however many dogs have.
Right, because
No, that's
dogs. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, so the internet's having a bad day. I'm having a worse one for having to have remembered that.
And now every listener of this podcast, wherever they are, whenever they are, is also having a bad day.
It's
so
true.
You're all welcome,
somebody
folks.
will be archive diving this a year from now, and we'll have to know about this. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
We should append onto the front end of this segment, hey, you having a good day? Not anymore. Just transition right into this. Parker Malloy asked simply, why though? About the person creating this mod. And this apparently sparked accusations of furry hatred.
Uh-huh.
And people apoplectic that a trans leader like Parker would hate on the furry community.
Uh-huh.
And now you know exactly as much as we do. This is the worst cold open we've ever done.
So what we're kind of talking about here is that the vibes have been thoroughly rancid this weekend for reasons that we'll get to in more detail a little bit later. And I think that if you are an American who is currently in your feelings about stuff, you're probably in pretty good company. At least everybody I've talked to this weekend is having some significant feelings about what our country's doing right now. So
I am certainly, because someone has to put a stop to this Miami thing.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, we can't be having the Canes win the national championship.
Completely unacceptable. Our nation will never recover.
No.
But, it's not helpful that they're playing the University of Mississippi because you can't even say their name without being racist. So that's frustrating.
Is Ole Miss racist?
You betcha, buddy. You want to hear the story on that?
I guess I do.
So this is an article from the Mississippian in 1939. Headline: Saturday, May 13th, 1939. Headline from the Mississippian: Ole Miss takes its name from racial slur, and this one doesn't start with an N, it's another one. Dialect, not abbreviation of state. So Ole Miss refers to the plantation owner's wife, essentially, the head mistress of the plantation, the one who ultimately was responsible for what happened inside the house. And yeah, so that's what was inspired the name that they used for the university dating back to 1897. And we should not be calling the University of Mississippi, UMiss, however you want to refer to them otherwise, Ole Miss, because no, let's not
Fantastic.
do that. Yeah. So if you needed a rooting interest for the college football playoff semifinal, you have on the one hand Miami,
Indiana,
which is a war crime. Yeah,
is what you want.
But that's the other side of the bracket, though. So, and on the one semifinal, you've got the school so racist you can't even say their name versus Miami, which is almost as bad. I don't know how you pick between those two. Anyhow, go Hoosiers.
Agreed. Go Hoosiers. I can't root for Oregon because they have those awful seizure-inducing uniforms.
And a different one every game, too.
Yeah, although Oregon versus Miami, because of Mario Cristobal, that would have some just wonderfully rancid interactions on social media. These two, the has-beens and the never-wases, fighting over Mario Cristobal.
No, you got to root for Indiana, though. I honestly, if you're not literally an alumni of one of these schools, and even then, honestly, it's such a fun story. It's such a, if you don't follow college football, like the idea that Indiana could be cruising to a national championship, and based on what they did to Alabama, I would say cruising is the right verb there, is just, it's wonderful. There is justice, and the arc of the universe is towards a moral outcome. That is where we have to leave it if they manage to win. So good job, Indiana. Keep winning. Beat these other schlubs. Ed, do you have anything to say?
No. My college football should be burned out and the ashes locked under Yucca Mountain take is clearly not welcome here.
You're right, it's not.
I know when I'm not wanted.
I guess normally I'd be rooting for Oregon out of some vestige of Pac-10 solidarity, but screw it. And, it's going to make Phil Knight unhappy if they lose.
I think Pac-10 solidarity, that ship sailed, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
When they
Solidarity says Washington State as they look at the rear of the Pac-10 ship sailing away to the horizon,
Yes.
and they wonder how long can we tread water, and look over at Oregon State and go, you too?
We'll always have the Beavers.
Yeah, well, at least the Seahawks won. At least the Panthers are in the playoffs.
Yeah, that was so the Panthers are in the playoffs at 8-9 because they won a three-way tie when the NFC South was decided by a game between two NFC South teams, neither of whom could win the NFC South. So
keep in mind, this is the same region of the country that sent a 5-loss team to the ACC championship game this year, who ended up winning it, I might add, as we discussed on a previous episode. So, yeah, North Carolina, we're just doing the thing this year in football. It's great.
I mean, Panthers already beat the Rams once this year, so you can't rule it out.
The last time we won a playoff game was when we had a losing record and made the playoffs anyways. So, it's...
I mean,
let's have fun with it.
Beastquake happened with a losing record for the Seattle Seahawks. That was the year that we snuck in and had a home game against the defending champion Saints.
Oh,
Beautiful.
yeah, wasn't that Pete's first or second year? I remember that. That was complete nonsense. 7-9 getting into the playoffs and getting a home game,
but also was a lot of fun. So
who is to say whether it was good or bad? Yeah. All right, let's get Ed back in the conversation. We're done with college football.
I can stop disassociating now.
Yeah, now you get to disassociate for other reasons, buddy, because we got to talk about Venezuela.
Fuck.
Yeah, so some things happened this weekend. Apparently, the Trump always chickens out heuristic has its limits. And I still think he kind of chickened out on this, but
too soon to tell.
We went in with a whole bunch of helicopters to kidnap the head of state of Venezuela. People are having complicated feelings about this because this is obviously not a great thing for your country to be doing. The most recent estimates say that we killed about 80 people, and probably that number is going to go up in the process of doing this,
including numerous civilians. I think it's important. If you sign up to be in a military of any kind, you are taking on a risk of some sort of, that doesn't justify anything that the U.S. did. But there is a real distinction between bombing an apartment building and killing an abuela and, hitting a military base. They're just always going to be different things. And we absolutely did the former, not the, as well as the latter. So
So whereas you might have thought that given that the resistance to the Maduro regime in Venezuela includes a woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize this year, who is allied with the Trump regime and who otherwise is, an ascendant star in the world of human rights and human freedom.
How about now?
You might think that we would have couped Venezuela for the sake of elevating the resistance. Apparently, that's not what we did. The vice president, Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, has taken over and appears to be, at least for now, hanging on to power, and there hasn't been all that much friction on the transition, at least from what I've seen from the international wire. Still early days. This happened in the middle of the night on Friday night, Saturday morning. So, we're We're not even 48 hours past when this all went down right now. But it does not immediately appear to me that Venezuela is erupting in full political chaos, which is a mixed bag, right? Like, the chaos is bad, but one of the advantages of getting rid of a guy who is, I think, at least in the context of this podcast, we can agree is a bad guy, is that you might get something better out of it. And it's not clear that we're going to get something better out of it. It's not clear the Venezuelans are going to get something better out of it.
It's not clear that the end point is going to be better, but the path to whatever it is definitely going to be less bad than if we tried to install the opposition, right?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that if you hand over to someone else in the regime, there will be a power struggle of some kind, but it's going to be contained within the regime as opposed to basically a civil war, right? Like, I don't think there was any way you were going to wholesale rewrite the power structures of Venezuela without mass violence. And we're not getting that. So I hesitate to use the word good because of the context. So like, I want to say this carefully, like, this is the least bad possible outcome, I think, assuming you are doing regime change in Venezuela from the perspective of the typical person on the street in Venezuela.
In terms of
even though you get to a worse place, even though you get to a worse place, the cost of getting there is so much lower that I think it's better, straightforwardly, from a purely utilitarian perspective.
Right. We're not doing the neocon dream of sweeping in and installing the good guys, but also hopefully we're not inciting a bloody internal struggle that will consume the lives of everyone in the country.
Exactly.
Ed, do you want to share your breaking news?
I don't know where it is sourced, so I'm not entirely sure. Like, this is coming off of the Finn Twitter account on Blue Sky, but I'm looking for
the same push notification on Bloomberg 5 minutes ago. Okay. So yeah, it's
Bloomberg is also saying that Rodriguez is saying Venezuela and U.S. should work towards a cooperation agenda, which, yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's what we know. I'm going to try to build a constructive case here. Here's what we know. We know that
wait, hold on. You're going to lay out what we know as opposed to like making a case for it, or you're going to make
I'm going to lay out some things we know that I think build a case for.
Okay, let's just for the sake of, because this is so fast moving and stuff, let's just talk about what we absolutely know and then get a bow on that and then come back and talk about, because I think I know where you're going. I just want to make sure that like we give the background, right?
Oh, okay, that's fair. So the sequence of events here is that early on Friday, we sent in, it was half a dozen helicopters and significant other air support. We did suppression of anti-air defense all over Venezuela. That's where I think the majority of the deaths probably came from, is that we were doing airstrikes against places where we thought that there were things that might shoot our helicopters. It was clear that we had some amount of inside cooperation. We've had various of the security forces compromised for some time to a greater or lesser extent. That's been fairly well reported that, there are definitely people who are taking American money on the various security forces payrolls. And we got in and we bagged up Maduro and his wife and got them out on a ship that was sailing back towards America. And I believe that they're now in prison in New York. This was not the worst case scenario from a tactical standpoint. Like, there were major tactical risks associated with this plan. And we got lucky in that nobody managed to hit a helicopter with anything important. But there was no loss of American life. That counts for something. And I think that this was from the standpoint of the special forces guys. This was about as well as this operation could have potentially gone.
So the question then becomes, why did we do this? And what is the plan? Because you don't just snatch a head of state and then pretend nothing happened, right? Presumably there was some sort of plan for what happens next after doing this. there has been reporting that Maduro was negotiating essentially stepping down from the presidency and elevating the vice president, and he would retire to some estate in Venezuela, and there would be some sort of deal. President deals, of course, being interested in deals between Venezuela and the U.S. And
he could stay if he gets rid of the mustache. I don't care for the mustache, folks.
What appears to have happened is the U.S. said, no, not good enough. We're just going to snatch him. We're not going to tell him this, but hey, Vice President, get ready. It's coming. And then we expect you to be nice to us afterwards, or the same thing will happen to you. That appears to have been the quid pro quo. And so now Rodriguez has stepped in. Delcy Rodriguez is the vice president. And it's still unclear the degree to which she's going to cooperate with the U.S. or even what that means, because recall that ostensibly this whole thing is about narco-terrorism. Well, what does cooperation look like there? Does it mean they shut down the non-existent massive fentanyl labs that are allegedly pumping speedboats full of drugs into the U.S. every day directly from Caracas? Or is there some other quid pro quo going on? We don't know. There's all sorts of speculation, right? One thing I will say is that the idea that this is over the oil is complicated. Recall, I think the episode, Prop to remind me, episode 36, it was about 6 weeks ago.
It's called Light Sweet Crude. I think it was 36.
We did an episode where Proctor laid out a theory about how Trump was attempting to influence OPEC. This would fit with Proctor's theory, right? What it doesn't fit with is the U.S. is going to come in, pump away all the oil, and make a ton of money doing so. And the reason for that is, as we talked about on that episode, that American oil producers are not interested. We're not in the same place we were in the mid-2000s or in the early 2010s, where companies were rewarded for growing production heavily. It's the opposite these days. Companies are punished for growing production at the expense of returning cash to shareholders through buybacks and dividends. And the investment required in Venezuela to generate large production growth is certainly in the tens of billions of dollars, possibly more, possibly an order of magnitude higher than that. I don't care how conspiracy brained you are. Chevron, ExxonMobil, Anadarko, none of these guys have any interest in pumping tens of billions of dollars into Venezuela, no matter what the geopolitical backdrop is, because they don't want to pump tens of billions into the Permian, which is in Texas, right? Like where they control every aspect of the value chain. They have no interest in taking a huge risk on low quality crude that is going to incur massive political and geopolitical risk that has been disinvested. Like you don't have any idea what the state of those fields are right now, when you could just dividend out to shareholders, and you're already in a price war with OPEC to begin with. So the idea that this is about the oil from the perspective of the corporate sector is wrong. What I think it does reveal is just how stupid the White House is. Yeah. They think it's about the oil, but they're not going to get buy-in from industry. There's no plausible path to that. It's the same thing as doing a bunch of messaging on affordability and then canceling a bunch of wind farms because you don't like the way windmills look. It's the exact same thing, right? Like the conspiracy, but from a conspiracy perspective. So I think it's really important. I don't know what's going to happen in Venezuela. I suspect we'll see some sort of orchestrated American investment there, but it's not going to be a big deal because the people that are actually allocating capital don't have any interest in putting that capital at the kind of risk that investing in Venezuela would require, regardless of the geopolitics.
You need to apologize to the oil, George. You called it low quality. You're going to get people yelling at us on Blue Sky for that.
I'm sorry, Vene crude is it's bad. It's heavy sour crude. It's not good crude. We can refine it in American refineries. There is a market for it, but it trades at a big discount to light sweet like Texas or Brent for a reason, right? Like it's not good quality crude.
Oh, of course you call the American crude light and sweet.
Hey, I haven't started talking about Maduro's, the plantain dish, not the head of state yet. So if you want people to get mad at me, let me do that, and then we'll see.
Somebody cut his mic.
So I want to jump back a second to something George said about what the White House was thinking. To kind of riff on that a little bit, one of the issues with what the White House as a whole is thinking about this is that there's pretty clearly different factions within the Trump administration here that want different things out of whatever we just did to Venezuela. You've got Trump himself who wants who knows what. Maybe he actually believes that the oil has significant value and that there's some significant economic benefit that's going to be unlocked if we go in and we set up production in the oil wells for some value of and for some value of the oil fields. I don't know. We've got Hegseth, who likes explosions. And
likes is an insufficient word here. But we do have this podcast tagged explicit, right?
We do.
Okay. Well, leave it to your imagination anyway.
Right. So
I was hoping you said no.
We have Marco Rubio, who at least some of the reporting suggests that he was arguing for trying to push for a more thorough regime change that would, kind of do the neocon dream and try to liberalize the Venezuelan government in the kind of classical liberal sense. Let's not map American politics onto this divide. But you have at least those three factions. You also have some of the negotiations about this transition out of office for Maduro were running through Doha per reporting.
Jesus Christ. I had missed that detail, and what?
Because everything runs through Doha now.
Oh my God.
So
no, I fully believe it. Like, that is the timeline we're living in.
If you missed that detail, the other detail is that apparently the negotiators in Doha for the Maduro transition were Rodriguez and her brother. So it's not like, I mean, I told you guys I was going to get a little conspiratorial on this one, but I don't think it's that hard to connect the dots and figure out that, you got a plan to whisk Maduro, the principal, to safety in exchange for certain concessions. And somehow people go into a room and somehow the negotiator for the Maduro side winds up president of Venezuela. Maduro winds up in jail in New York City. And also we managed to run an extremely smooth special ops operation where we know where everything is and we're not meeting heavy resistance.
I have played a lot of diplomacy over the years, and there's a term for this in the game called a stab. This is as classic of a stab as you could possibly come up with on the part of Delcy Rodriguez. Nothing but respect for Delcy Rodriguez on that one.
Yeah, I mean, at least provisionally, she's played it very well. And this also explains why Trump was immediately on, media sources talking about how he felt that Delcy Rodriguez was going to be very cooperative with the United States and we were going to get the things we wanted out of the new Venezuelan regime, despite the fact that it is essentially the same as the old Venezuelan regime, just with a different person in charge.
And possibly a cut going to the U.S. instead of China/Russia.
Yeah, like the White House is going to get first option on the finest 10% of the cocaine harvest. I don't know what's happening here.
But certain people are going to be stoked.
And by certain people, you mean roughly 80% of the staffers for this administration?
The important thing is which 80%, and my lawyer has advised me not to speculate any further at this time.
Yeah.
Related, Marco Rubio has been erect for 5 days.
Yeah, I don't think that's because of the cocaine.
Walk into Secretary of State's office and it's just snow.
Marco Rubio is the only person with neoconservative leanings who has not realized they're all Democrats now.
Anyway, we did a thing in Venezuela.
Wait, hold on. Speaking of which, what is Build Crystal's take on all this?
Oh, I haven't looked.
I haven't seen
I have
it.
to.
That's a good question.
We got to look this up because he's going to be genuinely conflicted.
See, I think in terms of how the politics of this plays, the fact that we did this regime change thing and we're leaving the politics of the regime exactly the same, leaves significant opening for Democrats who might otherwise be wedged off to just say, yeah, we think it's great that Maduro is gone, but why the hell did you leave Madurismo in place? Why didn't we do the neocon thing? And, you're seeing some of that out of Democrats like Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida, who has a big Venezuelan expat community in her district and otherwise has ties to that world. This is Maduro is the heir to the Chavez dictatorship, and this is stuff that has been bad for a long time. And there are a significant number of refugees from Venezuela who have been in the United States for decades now, running from the prior iterations of this regime. And like many exiles, they would like to see their country return to something that they're happier with. So I think that the fact that Rodriguez is staying in place opens space for Democrats who otherwise would be fairly easy to pick off with this move. Like the Debbie Wasserman Schultzes of the world, or, the Jared Polises of the world. I don't know what his deal is, but he was also lavishly praising the removal of Maduro.
His deal is that he has
no,
dog
worse.
brain.
George, worse. He is. I discovered this week he is a League of Legends player.
Oh,
just one bullet, 4 guys firing blanks. No one knows what's in their gun. Just that's it.
No, he does understand League of Legends. Okay.
Okay. All right. I was worried that was like a gesture of not getting it, because it's one of the worst things I could say about someone.
Yeah. No, I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fascist Republican League of Legends player, like power rankings to be determined.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think a lot of people are kind of wanting to map Iraq War era politics and Iraq War era political valence onto this situation. And I don't think it's a very good analogy, because this isn't the neocon dream being realized. They could have done it that way, and they didn't do it that way.
To wit, Bill Kristol's take essentially is that Trump is going to boot this, and, it's bad because Trump is bad. I mean, substantially. He hasn't posted a lot about it. I just took a look at his feed, and yeah, I mean, it's like, he's not libbing out, but pretty close.
Yeah. I mean, he did also slide in that, like, well, he quoted Bulwark article that's like, this is not the first regime that Trump has tried to overthrow in the Western Hemisphere, which, fair. Yeah, I get the feeling he's leaning on the illegal side as opposed to the wrong side, which can't win them all.
I mean, like, he's gonna have to sub out the Maduro voodoo doll in his office for a Rodriguez voodoo doll. It's going to be a pain in the ass.
He still has the Chavez one. He just put a different face on it.
Yeah. Like this is not an outcome that is going to make the neocon guys happy. This is not an outcome that's going to make the liberalization and democracy guys happy. Even those who are extremely hawky and believe in a strong American military role in transitioning places to democracy through, fire and the sword. This isn't the outcome that it looks like we're getting, at least as of right now. What it looks like we're getting. I don't
think it's going to make the Venezuelan expats in the U.S., the Venezuelan community in the U.S. happy. I mean, they were happy yesterday, or I guess Saturday. What day is it today? They were happy in immediate response, but nothing is going to change substantively on the ground.
Yeah.
Like, American involvement in Venezuela taking a tax of some kind, which I'm not even sure we're going to get to that point, regardless of what their intention is, but, that's clearly the intention. And yet everything else stays the same. The regime remains oppressive. There are no elections, like, still highly unequal, highly concentrated power in the hands of roughly 1,000 people, I think is the estimate, that basically run the country. Like, okay, congrats, guys.
And, not to put too fine a point on it, but one of the reasons you might want to do this if you're Trump is, have a same hemisphere large ally that is going to be happy to take deportations, including of Venezuelans going back to Venezuela.
Or when he flees in 2029.
So, if you're a Venezuelan expat in the United States, they can speak for themselves, and they will speak for themselves. But I agree with George that they're probably not too happy with the way this is shaping up.
Ed makes a good point.
They might be happy right now, but I suspect 6 months from now, we're going to look back and it's not going to feel, things will have sunk in a bit.
Ed's point about fleeing in 29 is a good one. Because remember, we have no extradition with Venezuela.
That's true.
And Caracas does have good beaches, lots of development opportunities down there.
As all of us who have watched Burn After Reading are aware.
Probably a Trump hotel coming. So,
what would you say we learned?
What did we learn, Palmer? I don't fucking know either.
We live in the dumbest timeline. That's all I can say.
Anyway, like I alluded to earlier, I've got some big feelings about this. I'm not sure what we can do to stop it. This isn't necessarily an ongoing thing. This isn't like, okay, we've got boots on the ground in Iraq and now there's an ongoing war that we can protest, bring the troops home and stop the killing. I think it's very plausible that we basically did all the military action that we're going to do in Venezuela, at least for right now. We're probably going to keep blowing up fishing boats for, whatever reason we've been blowing up fishing boats.
Are we? I mean, that's an interesting one. Are we, though? Because didn't we just make a deal or whatever? So if you're blowing up the fishing boats, maybe they'll just find other fishing boats to blow up? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my assumption was kind of that we were blowing up the fishing boats that Delcy Rodriguez wanted us to blow up already.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that one. God damn it.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
shout outs to Delcy Rodriguez, honestly. You got to look, you don't have to respect the game, but you absolutely have to respect the player of the game in this instance. It's a gross game, but she plays it very well.
Most people just play a paradox strategy game. Most people just fire up Crusader Kings 3. This home game shit, just no. Take it back.
Yep.
Maybe they'll start blowing up boats in like the English Channel or something. They'll take out Keir Starmer and replace him with West Streeting.
I
don't give them ideas.
There is a really we saw such a classic knee-jerk reaction where people had very strong feelings about this, as they should, because this is bad. I think if you listen back to this, we've come across as sounding like, this isn't the end of the world necessarily, which is sort of our whole deal. But I think all four of us agree this is really, really bad. And this sort of thing on its own is an impeachable offense, in my opinion. I mean, we've kidnapped the head of state. There's a lot of stuff that's wrong with this. That's all a given, right? But just because something is really bad and just because something is really salient in the moment does not mean it's going to have a major impact on, for instance, domestic American elections 10 months from now, 11 months from now, right? It doesn't mean, let alone 3 years from now. I genuinely saw people being like, this is going to determine the 2026 and 2028 elections. And it's if you think that, if you think that, you're just stupid. You're a stupid person. I'm sorry, you're an idiot.
This is not going to determine
6 months.
This is not going to determine special election outcomes in 3 weeks.
Correct.
Forget about the midterms.
You would have to have a country that could find Venezuela.
You are trying to model something with inputs that have an R squared of 0. That's what you're trying to do. And no, that doesn't work.
I thought I was the nerd on this podcast.
Sir, I spend all day in Excel. What do you think I'm doing in there?
Are you getting R squareds out of Excel? What kind of pervert shit is that?
Buddy, I run Lois in Excel. Yeah. Real stats is wicked smart. Looking at you, Ed. Okay, so very, very bad thing to happen. Highly salient in the moment, but it's not going to be relevant to domestic American elections. It's not.
Yeah.
Is that bad? That fact is itself bad, but it's the world we live in.
I think that one of the dangers of this is that it's open season for more of these special ops stuff. We've had reporting for a while that they're drawing up plans to go after the cartels in Mexico. I have a hard time seeing how that goes well. But that's, military action in Mexico over the protestations of Mexico is there are a lot of really bad scenarios that come out of that, man. There have been movies about some of the bad scenarios that come out of that. And
it's interesting to hear Mexican elites talk in private about that outcome because I have asked some of them personally and enthusiastic about the concept does not quite sum it up. So Scheinbaum is going to be in a bit of a pickle if the U.S. really decides to go to war with the cartels inside Mexico. We're not going to go after the Mexican government in any meaningful sense. That's not the issue here, unlike in Venezuela. But there are a real constituency of very powerful people in Mexico who would be like, yeah, great, you're going to bring MQ-9s down to go after these people? By all means, please.
Right. I mean, and you know, it's not like we don't have other models for what it looks like when you're fighting a regional war against a non-nation state military actor. One of the models you might look at is Hezbollah, right? Like you've got a significant armed force there that has kind of a relationship of détente, let's say, with the actual army in Lebanon, but has a very adversarial relationship with Israel. And so you have splash damage happening while Israel and the Lebanese army largely try to stay out of each other's way. And Hezbollah and IDF are fighting each other. That splash damage is significant. Like there are lots and lots of Lebanese people who have been hurt from that splash damage, and lots of Israelis who've gotten hurt from that splash damage. But it's not quite the same as state-on-state conflict, despite the fact that it's taking place across state borders. One characteristic of the cartels that, at least we know from their operations in Central America, is that they really like to send messages through either corruption of public officials or assassination of public officials. And I think we're somewhat underrating the chance that that set of tactics is going to bleed into the United States.
I would not want to be a high profile Republican politico of any kind if we actually go down this road, because you are on the target list at that point.
Yeah.
If it's real, right? That's the other thing, is maybe we do this and it's kayfabe.
Yeah.
Because there is some evidence that the whole cartel thing is just picking favorites among the cartels, right? The whole targeting strategy, like you made the reference to Delcy Rodriguez picking the boats. There are other people that could be picking the boats or suggesting which boats to hit, right? There are lots of ways to funnel funds to people in this administration, whether it's the Trump family or anybody below them in the pyramid. And you're talking about organizations who are very good at funneling funds to people. That's their whole game. That's the whole story, right? If they are a logistics operation with a bank attached, right, and a lot of guns, I should say.
Well, the guns are an export thing for us, right? Like they buy the guns from America,
right?
Like
right.
these are American guns that are going south. That's anyway.
Yeah, we're trying to close that trade deficit, George. Get with the program here.
Well, I don't think the Census Bureau is tracking those because even the ATF couldn't. So
no, we've never had a cooperating cartel before.
But that's the thing, right? Like, wow, how much cooperation really is there? Anyhow, we're getting very conspiracy brain this episode, but I don't know the events of the past 72 hours. If you can't look at those and start chewing on them a bit, I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily. It's not the end of the world, but it's not good. That's for sure. It's really not good, and I think. If we get to a place where there is an actual war between American armed forces inside Mexico and cartels because this operation was quote unquote successful, and that turns into a new age of political assassinations in the United States by a foreign actor, none of that is good. None of that goes a good place for anybody, even if you're just sitting back on the sidelines and reading the headlines. Right.
This is your most bold prediction ever.
Because
cartel fight, not good.
Because then that gets used as a justification for,
of course,
domestic policies which affect everyone, right?
Sure.
So even if, like, even if you are subscribed to the dubiously, in this case, applied theory of FAFO, and if Trump wants to go after the cartels and they hit back and start knocking off Republicans in various positions of power around the country, you get what you get what you play. That still has big splash damage domestically. So that's heavy speculation on my part, to be clear, pretty much across the board, except for my characterization of the cartel's business model, which was 100% accurate. It's a logistics operation with a lot of guns and a bank attached.
And, again, we've got an administration right now who's still got Tom Homan in a significant position of power, who was notably in the news for taking $50,000 of cash in a kava bag from an FBI sting.
You really know how to bring it down, don't you?
So,
God damn it.
I'm just saying,
why did you have to remind us about the kava
they're
bag?
open for business. Yeah. It's morning in America.
Both kava still somehow and the Trump administration vis-a-vis the bribes. Yeah.
I'm offended by the kava bag. What is this, college football? Buying recruits or something? No.
No, we're not doing cash in bags anymore. It's not a Winn-Dixie full of money to the VIP section right now, time in college football anymore. Now it's all above board and getting written on checks.
Not quite.
Oh, come on.
No, it's not quite. But yeah, for the most part.
They're saying so many words I don't understand, and I'm not going to ask any questions.
All right,
the
let's start with
Winn-Dixie
the
line is a Lil Wayne lyric, for the record.
Indiana is a state in the Midwest. They're bad at football.
Thank you, Proctor.
They have this pork tenderloin sandwich.
All right, now I'm interested.
It's the weirdest. I think that is one of the weirdest sandwiches in the country. And we have some weird ones out here. It's a pork tenderloin, but it's hammered flat into like a schnitzel situation. But they're huge. They're paper thin and they're huge. They're roughly 10 times the size of the bun in terms of surface area.
Which feels like the bun is just a cruel joke at that point.
Right.
Okay.
But there's multiple states that have those too.
I thought they were like an Indiana thing primarily. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
I think like Iowa or Nebraska, I don't know, one of those corn states.
I think if you had German
really
immigration and you raise pigs, you do the big schnitzel.
You probably got it. Yeah.
You just schnitzel whatever you can.
Yeah.
So it's probably a Midwestern and especially upper Midwestern thing. I don't know why you would do it. Just make a chicken sandwich. Why do I want this rubbery ass pork tenderloin thing as a sandwich? No.
I like a good schnitzel. I can't join you on that one, Latex.
You're getting your pork tenderloins from the wrong places, sir. That's the dumbest sentence I've ever said in my life.
All right. That's enough
the
of
dumbest
Venezuela
sentence
talk.
so far, Ed.
That's enough of Venezuela talk. We're going to talk about something much more uplifting. That's right, baby. It's AI. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what's going on the Everything app.
Coming for all of our jobs. All right. So first of all, we're going to talk about Grok. And Grok's recent turn directly into on-demand pornography. Which is
just on-demand pornography. It's a little
also
bit worse
not
than that.
recent, but
well, it's been worse recently, right? Like they both gotten better at image generation, and they made the model much more present in terms of how you can generate images.
That's the thing that's changed, because like they've had all of their image generation stuff forever, and people make a sport of breaking these things, and they have had some really filthy models for a while, but they didn't until this week. Well, last week? I don't know. Time doesn't exist anymore. Let you just say at Grok, make this person naked.
You can do that now.
Well,
do they care about who the person is?
No. Remarkably, to a deranged degree, they do not.
Do they care about the person's age?
No, they do not. this has some rather significant knock-on effects that you would expect to see vis-a-vis the, oh wait, we gutted that entire part of federal enforcement.
Yeah, those guys are all doing street snatches of
if
refugees
they still
these
exist.
days.
I actually don't even know who was talking to NCMEC, the folks who run like the known hashes of child pornography stuff. I don't even know who's left anymore in that space. I used to have to do some content moderation stuff. And so like I knew a little bit about the space, but yeah, like that's all wreckage now. I don't even know who you'd report it to.
So formerly Twitter, X is now awash in just extremely vile material.
Yeah.
And that seems like the kind of thing that has to take a toll on your info environment, right? Like you're just,
I don't know, ask every journalist.
you're just kind of marinating in that constantly. And like, I mean, like, I don't want to tell people to go tool around on Twitter and you'll see this, but tool around on Twitter and you'll see this, that like any image of a person, any image of somebody who is remotely female is going to have 5 drive-bys by randos asking Grok to turn them naked.
All right, we should clarify, because technically, and I mean this in the most technically sense, they are not asking to turn that person naked. They're talking about quote unquote bikinis with quote unquote flesh-colored bikinis, because like Grok is stupid and credulous. But it's worse than that, because see, they found new tricks. Instead of just that, it's like, how about you put swastikas on them? How about you put the Confederate flag on them? Right? Like, this is getting deranged, and like you're seeing genuinely like the worst id of these people. And I will note, it is not just American conservatives who are doing this. Oh, sorry, MAGA people. Oh, sorry, the same thing. You're seeing this stuff in Russian. You're seeing this stuff in Brazilian Portuguese, right? Like, this stuff is coming out of the woodwork just basically across the scumbag spectrum. And the locus is that they are all staying on X. It's the everything app for fascists.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you shouldn't be there. And it's really embarrassing that, like, I have colleagues who I have respected in the technical field who think they still need to be there because, well, this is where the discourse happens. No, it's not. You are all being had. And like, it chaps my ass, because I think there are very good and useful ways to employ things like large language models. This, shockingly, is not it. And now we're having to have this conversation again because of Elon Musk again. Right. And at some point, people have to just be like, hey, maybe you should stop putting Grok code in your applications because you are giving money to a CSAM peddling organization. And I don't know how, I just don't know how to find the words to explain that in small enough, few enough syllables for these people.
Complete abdication of anything even pretending to be public virtue. Anyone that's still regularly posting on that app and like spending lots of time there, I will make an exception, and I said this in a post this afternoon on Blue Sky to Kelsey Atherton, who, love Kelsey, great guy. We were talking about this back and forth a bit. And if you have to be there to monitor the right-wing infosphere, either because you're a journalist, a researcher, whatever, you have a pass. Like, you get it. Like, you have a beat you have to cover. You have a set of extremists you got to keep tabs on. You get it. You're like the Media Matters people, right? Like, I expect you to like take psychic damage from this because it's gross stuff, right? And you're going into a war zone and getting shot at, like, on an ethical level. Right.
And more to the point, you have to take precautions that I don't think a lot of them are, right?
Correct.
Like a lot of the people that I know in that space who monitor right-wing fuckery, the anecdotally at least, like, I worry a lot about this for friends of mine, because I see this all the time where a lot of the rules have changed in terms of like exactly what sort of mental damage you are exposing yourself to in these things.
Yeah.
And I really think a lot of the people who should be the eyes and ears for this are boiling themselves really, really fast. And I don't know how we deal with that, but we kind of have to.
That is a separate problem and a distinct problem and a much smaller scale problem. Like, really, it's a trivial number of people that it applies to. I mean, we're talking hundreds or thousands of people, maybe 5 figures if you really want to be generous about it.
Absolutely.
Everybody else,
get out of the pool.
I'm sorry. You are doing something that is ethically wrong, and you know it, and you should be better.
And you're frying your brain.
I think we've been on our soapbox this week.
I just...
No, you're right. Like, they should be better. At least 2 of the people on here, I believe you were also a person of no account, had substantial, followings on Twitter, right? Like, I didn't. I had, 900 followers.
I didn't.
I thought you did. I saw you there. Maybe it was just...
I was around. I didn't have a large following, though.
Maybe it was just Go Like Hell Machine, like the reflected sunlight from good friend Go Like Hell Machine. I hope he listens to this when he's gonna friggin' kill me. But so what? Follower counts aren't real. Just leave.
Yeah,
that number make brain tickle feel good.
Even if you have a ton of followers, if you're not posting the sort of things that they want on that godforsaken website in the For You tab, you're not going to get any of the interaction anyway. Like, we all know multiple journalists on Blue Sky who will tell you they get more clicks, they get more views out of Blue Sky links than they get on X, the Everything app.
By an order of magnitude in a lot of cases, too. It's not a small difference.
I mean, it's not even just them, right? Like, and this ties into some of the other stuff I think we wanted to talk about, but I posted an article 5 days ago that I wrote, 200 likes, 60 reposts, and I got 2,500 unique viewers on that article, right? That's kind of ridiculous for an app that's supposedly so small, but people actually click links because they're not downvoted, right? You actually get to see these things.
Yeah.
I do think that the penetration for a lot of really interesting things has gone up because of this. And you see a lot more people that are frankly more generous with their willingness to talk about other people's stuff in ways that seemed kind of rivalrous on Twitter, right? It's just better.
We've got some metrics on some of that too, in terms of where research papers are getting published. Blue Sky is really doing very well on that in terms of academia in particular. That seems to me like it's probably, well, I hope it's a leading indicator. We'll see. But, if you want to find where people are talking about intricate things, then I think that a lot of that conversation is happening on the Blue Skies of the world rather than on X.
Yeah, and I was going to say the conversation you get on Blue Sky is just vastly superior. The best case scenario for you on Twitter, if you go viral or something these days, is probably 30,000 60-year-old morons posting the cry laughing emoji.
Oh, you're not wrong.
Or posting the most dog-brained reply you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is, of course, that they're going to post, a picture of you with a swastika tattooed on your arm from Grok, or they're passing around CSAM or whatever, that alone is a very good reason to get the hell off Twitter too.
I do want to shout out one media organization that has gone Blue Sky first in a really impressive way. Kickback Soccer has made Blue Sky their whole deal. They were the first exclusive media partner with Blue Sky. They did a Blue Sky first launch. They have a bunch of accounts. They put out a bunch of content. Not everyone likes soccer. That's fine. But if you're going to be following sports content somewhere, check out Kickback on Blue Sky, because they have really prioritized it. And I think, again, Public Virtue Caucus over here, we need to celebrate public virtue. And that is a virtuous thing to do. Posting on Twitter is not.
For the next 15 minutes, I will accept soccer in my light cone.
I mean, we don't have to talk about soccer, although Arsenal did win this weekend and Man City dropped points again. So it's all going very, very well. Thank you.
Although you don't have to You don't have to go blue sky first, because after all, our friends over at the Shutdown Fullcast are now LinkedIn first for their Fullcast After Dark episodes.
LinkedIn is a fascinating place. If you don't spend much time there, don't.
Speaking of which, the Shutdown Fullcast folks were out in force at the Duke's Mayo Bowl last Friday, and folks, it was a great time. The punts were celebrated. We had a good time.
You know, I kind of forgot that you went directly from Duke's Mayo Bowl to the invasion of Venezuela the other night. That must have been an interesting one.
I typically don't stay up till midnight, but I did because the friggin' fourth quarter didn't even start until 11 p.m. And that was about the time I said, okay, I can't do this anymore. It's been a long, very Mayo-filled day. Wake up at 8 a.m. the next morning, and it turned out I missed the start of the bombing by about 4 hours the night before. So,
yeah,
great.
I didn't, but I was.
How do you sleep after that? Like, how did you go to sleep? Yeah, okay.
That's the fun part. You don't.
I forgot you don't have a toddler.
No, I can be as irresponsible as my brain makes me be.
So that's a pretty good segue to our conversation about artificial intelligence in you, which we wanted to do a quickie segment on here. I think that
you hope it's quick.
Just kind of to talk about where I am on things. I think that I have been at various points an AI skeptic and an AI believer, but my opinion now is that essentially these LLMs are here to stay. They're useful. They do a bunch of useful things. We're still in the relative infancy of figuring out what all we can do with them. As somebody who has not zero technical skills, but a limited set of technical skills and mostly don't play with LLMs, what should I be doing with AI right now? You know, how do I engage with this new technology? How do I welcome it into my life, into my work, into what I'm doing? How do I set myself up so that I can get something out of it today or in the future? And as I've kind of tried to do that, you know, it's become clear that there's not necessarily a guidebook out there that is current that will tell you what you should be doing here. That there are a bunch of different applications of AI, and the various models are good at different things, and it's intimidating to dip your toe in. It's hard to figure out where the right place to grab things is, in part because the technology is moving so fast, and in part because it's a space where it feels like there's a lot of bullshit peddlers operating. You know, everybody wants to rub AI on everything they're doing. And it seems like most of the places where people are rubbing AI for the sake of rubbing AI, it's not necessarily having a big positive impact on people's lives.
Proctor, can you please not say the words rubbing AI ever again?
So I thought it might be useful to talk to Ed a little bit, who's done some amount of frontline work with what AI is doing, and also talk through some of my recent experiences with dipping my toe into the world of vibe coding. And, you know, how that's gone, and how, if this is something you're interested in, how you can engage with it. Ed, what should we be doing right now to prepare ourselves for the future of artificial intelligence?
So to sort of answer that / non-answer that in a long-winded way, for background, I've been messing with these things since GPT had a 2 on it. So about 2021-ish. I thought it was neat, but also it plainly couldn't do anything. So I was only slightly less surprised than everybody else when GPT-3 came out and oops, it works. I do use this stuff professionally. I also do use this stuff in like my own, I want to say work, but like, I mean, things that I do personally outside of the job I get paid for. I mess around with a lot of this stuff. I use it for like managing my own stuff, which is a good lead into saying I have no idea. Because who can, right? Like, none of this stuff makes any sense until you've sort of spent a lot of time with it. And at that point, like, the question kind of stops making sense, if that makes sense. If that parses. Like, I don't know what people should be doing with it, because my path to it was I messed with this stuff for 3 years, right? Like I just sort of poked at it. And I don't actually think that's as effective now, because I think we are dealing with like a market that's gotten stupid. So one of the jokes that we used to have, I'm sure someone on Blue Sky has told this joke in the last day, but a real technologist has two pieces of technology, a printer and a gun to shoot the printer with if it starts making noises. Because like, you shouldn't trust any of this stuff. It is all lying. However, some lies are useful, is kind of a good way to look at it, right? Because if you look at it in the way that I kind of want to frame it, and this is going to be a little incoherent, but I want to frame it in the way that you see from the people who say it doesn't work, right? You see a lot of people say it doesn't know anything. And I don't mean the ontologists. The PhDs should not latch onto that one. But like that it lies all the time. It hallucinates. It can't possibly like have factual or applicable stuff. Except then you go use it and it does. And what I run into a lot in trying to navigate these is when you use it foolishly, you get their point of view. The thing is, you kind of have to get past that, right? Because it's until you sort of know the rules, you're going to get crap out of it. And that's one of the biggest problems with these things, is that they make really authoritative crap, right? Like it's semantically meaningless garbage, but it's dressed up as if it is real.
Right. And I mean, this is in some ways kind of a human cognitive failing, that one of the shortcuts that we've all learned over the years is that you can assess work quality by looking at the polish of the work. Mm-hmm. You know, that things like, is it well put together? Is it formatted correctly? Are things syntactically correct? Tends to have a high correlate with the amount of effort that's been put into a project.
Yeah, there are entire athletic conferences worth of elite institutions that think this way, or that we think this way about.
I think it's substantially been a good heuristic for most of our lives.
In some ways.
I'm not sure it's a good heuristic anymore. Like it's not perfect.
I would actually say it's actually been kind of bad, because that really privileges people like, frankly, us, right? Sure. Like, I, for my sins, can put a word or two together, and this is my native language. I work with a lot of people who are ESL, and like, if you just read the email, you might go, I don't know about that person, but they, you know, the work speaks for itself in other ways. And like in tech has lots of problems, but if you actually can deliver, it often, not always, shakes out in the wash. There are definitely cases where it's not, speaking generally there. But one of the things that I think you start to see with large language models in general is that the focus on the words is the wrong thing. And I mean that both in terms of the presentation, but also what they say. The way I tend to look at these things is much more abstract, and I don't expect people to get to that point on day one, but maybe it's worth sort of describing them as I kind of see them, because I think I may be wrong, but I'm wrong in the right direction in terms of it. And like I said, I wrote a piece 5 days ago or so that tried to encapsulate this from the perspective of talking to people who are a little more skeptical and like a little less into the tech side of things. But the description that I came up with is, and I think this works, an LLM is a semi-autonomous tool for working with labeled, coherent information at a continuously variable level of abstraction, which is a lot of words that I spend the rest of the piece sort of trying to unpack. But you can kind of think of it as like what it's not, which is to say it's not an oracle, right? Like it's not going to be able to answer your questions correctly without being given information to get there. And there are a lot of paths to doing that. A lot of the product side work in large language models over the last year to 18 months or so, I think, has been in terms of like making that easier for people. Like if you wanted to get something useful out of GPT 3.5, the earliest ChatGPT stuff, you had to go like download papers and convert them to text and paste them into the thing and all that stuff. Now they just hooked up a web search, right? And do they reliably always search the web? I don't know. My Claude instance does, but I told it to. So I don't know what the normal one does. However, because I said search the web for anything, search the web before answering any query, it goes and does that. And because it searches the web, it pulls in information that can then be used to align both the prompt, the question that I asked or the thing that I asked it to do, with a bigger chunk of information that kind of pushes into the right part of the model, if that makes sense.
For what it's worth, if you tell Claude, and that's the only LLM I've really used to any extensive degree, I want to see a source for whatever you're going to tell me. And I don't use large language models for information discovery very often. It's usually only when I have something like I need a bunch of very surface level information about a bunch of companies all at once, which is like the perfect task for an LLM because it can go out and just spit out very concise summaries of large bodies of text that's on the public internet. Mm-hmm. If you say, I want to see a source for what you're claiming, I have never, since Claude started embedding search material into answers, seen something that was outright wrong using that approach.
Correct.
When I include in the prompt, I want to see the source. Now, when you get into areas that are grayer and some sources are better than others, I'm not going to say that Claude always picks the right source because, right? I mean, human beings don't either, let alone Google or whatever. There's no 100% way to be sure that it's picking the right source. But you can evaluate the source if it's giving you a piece of information. And you should probably, especially for low latency, just quick, fill me in about this queries. I don't really use LLMs for that frequently at all. It's maybe once a week at most. I usually just Google stuff, and that works for me. What I use LLMs for is generating code. And for that, when it's a closed loop and you're just then running the code and then troubleshooting the code and then checking the code's output based on what you know to be true, they really are exceptional. And it's because of what Ed was saying. It's because they are operating with instructions on a closed data set, i.e. the language of the code, right? They are able to do that in a way that open-ended questions about general knowledge is just harder to do given how the math of their processes work. And, I see what my brother is deep into LLM stuff and has been for a while. He was a lead engineer for a startup that IPO'd and ended up getting bought out. And he's taken a couple of years off and he spent a lot of time messing around with LLMs. And the stuff he's able to do with them, it's genuinely magic. What someone who has a good understanding of the high level process they're working with and the tools that they need to accomplish that process can then provide an LLM to do and do in a way that is just much faster than a human could do it because it's all a closed loop.
And there's a couple of important things there that I want to tease out because they're things that I think a lot of the audience at some level I feel like people may or may not know, but it's worth making explicit either way. So the stuff that George just described around web searches, I anecdotally agree with that if I'm using Claude Web. If I'm going to Claude.ai, hitting enter and typing something into that. But that's not Claude. That is Claude.ai. That is, I call it Claude Web, right? Because that is a web application that is around the large language model. It is not the large language model. It is a set of system prompts that are supposed to align it to the outputs that the developers of Claude.ai, who are not the same team at Anthropic as the people who make the model, what they want it to do, what they want, how would they want it to react in certain situations. And then on top of that, it is attaching a set of what we call tools to the model's context, such as a web search tool, which takes inputs, what do you want to search? And also like that little caption that shows up when you do it. Searching about blah, blah, blah. That is a separate field that the large language model emits in order to trigger that tool. And I agree with George's characterization there because I think that it's a adequate first level search. But then take a different harness, right? Like a different application that can use the same model. Claude Code is is kind of my go-to, which is also made by Anthropic, but because it is designed more towards a power user audience, generally, but not exclusively programmers, people who are interested should absolutely go use Claude Code, even if they're not programmers. It makes a lot of things clearer. But what Claude Code does is it provides tools around things like reading files on your local machine, writing files, executing commands, looking at the output of those commands, and then deciding what to do next, right? And they're blurring the lines a little bit with this Claude Desktop and Claude Web. They're kind of trying to let different things execute code in different contexts. But one of the things you can do with Claude Code is what I do. I have an internet researcher subagent that I built that not only does it do web searches sort of using the underlying Claude infrastructure, which is probably the same stuff they use for Claude Web, but I tell it how to do it, right? Like I tell it what kinds of sources I want. I give it a mode of classification for these services where I'm like, Tier 1 are primary sources about this topic. If it's something like software development related, it's the documentation for that thing. Tier 2 would be blog posts and other material around it. Tier 3 might be Reddit, because turns out Reddit is kind of the last bastion of human-generated knowledge now,
right,
which is a weird sentence in itself. But like, because I've done this and because I've sort of structured this stuff, the open secret, at least as far as I'm concerned, is that none of the inference providers building their own software know how to actually use it, or know how to make it usable for other people, I guess is maybe a fair way to put it. So I don't know how the web search works in Claude Web because they can't show me. I know exactly how the web search works in Claude Code because I wrote it. And by doing that, and again, this is something a non-technical person can do because these are all just words. You end up thinking about how you would do that research yourself. And because here's a good way to put it. If the input is something you can describe in words, and the desired output is something you can describe in words, and the steps to get from one to the other are things you can describe in words, there's a fairly high likelihood a large language model can do it. And if you don't like how it works out of the box, you can fix it. And this is a mindset that a lot of people don't have, but it's also, this is just the sort of thing that I always do. And so getting back to the original thing, I get tons of value out of internet searches because as long as it is something that can be found on the internet, which is a genuine problem for a lot of stuff, I get excellent results that are better than I get from Google because it just does it 30 times.
I think that one of the differences you run into here is if you have this magical genie that you can ask to bring you anything, right? One of the differences between search and creation is that if I describe something if I describe something specifically that I want and I say, Genie, make me this, then I've got the widget I want. If it's code, I've got the coding widget I want. I've got, saying the name of the thing is the same as having the thing. With search, saying the name of the thing is not always the same as having the thing. And one of the problems you run into with hallucination is if you're saying something like this shows up with legal references a lot. If you're saying, build me a persuasive paper that does X, Y, and Z with references that support, these things I'm trying to argue in my brief, it'll build you things that are references that would be great if they existed, but they don't exist because it built them too, because it felt that you needed a reference there and it saw other things that were shaped kind of like that reference that it could use as a model to build into.
Kind of.
If you're saying, if you in the context of search are saying, bring me something that has these characteristics and it makes you something rather than finding you something that has those characteristics, you have a problem.
Right. But that's why you have tools.
That's
right?
Right. That's why you specify search.
Yeah. And it would probably be helpful to take a quick step back. There's two main things you have to think about when you are using one of these things. And this is going to be a little technical. I'll try to make it only mostly painful. You have the training set and you have context. The training set is quote unquote the model, right? It's the thing that you are getting out of the box when you go to Hugging Face and download one to run on your own computer, or when you go talk to Claude Sonnet 4.5 dash whatever date. This is a big pile of numbers that defines a set of layers with nodes in them. I don't want to get into the weeds, but essentially the way that you can kind of look at how a large language model works is it never sees the words that you write. What a large language model does is it has a layer that translates the words you write into a vector, like geometry, right? Like a point in space. This isn't three-dimensional. This is thousands upon thousands. But that vector points somewhere. Where it points is defined by the model. It's defined by the weights, the training that was done to the model. You are putting in words that point at a certain spot in that meaning space. And then you have two options. You can say, give me stuff out of the training set. And if you do that, this is where hallucinations come from. You've underspecified, you are asking it to do something from a thing that is fundamentally not all that different, at least mentally, from like, find me the pixel in a JPEG, right? A JPEG is smashed down all the colors. It's not a real thing. You're going to get something that may or may not be the actual thing you were expecting because it's been compressed down. However, as you give it prompts and as you give it information, that stuff goes into the context. That's like the active working memory of your session. It's not the model. It's the stuff you are putting in every time you ask the model to like permute and give you something back. But this is where it is highly reliable. I'm not going to say perfectly because nothing is perfect, but like if you use something like Claude Haiku to summarize a document within, all right, maybe if you're a lawyer, don't do this, but like for a normal person.
To break in for just a second, Claude has essentially 3 levels of model. Haiku is the simplest, fastest, and lowest weight model. Sonnet is the mid-weight model, and Opus is their smartest model. They also go from cheap to run to expensive to run.
Yes. If Sonnet costs 1, if Haiku costs 1, Sonnet costs 3, Opus costs 5. But you would use Haiku for this because it's cheap, right? Like you can throw a big document at it and you can get back a summary and it's going to be highly reliable. You don't have to take my word for it. Go do it, right? Like you'll quickly find that as long as you've given it information, the outputs are reliable. And then you can feed this back into whatever you're doing, right? Like by doing that, you are putting more stuff into context that is at least generally aligned with what you want out the other end. And because of a bunch of stuff around the way that the model actually works, the stuff that is in the context matters a lot more than the training set. If you have put the thing you want in the context, it will usually find it. If you put the information to derive what you want into the context, it will usually find it. Where people fall down is, as Proctor said originally, like underspecifying. Don't provide enough information. It's going to go look at the training set. The training set is good for knowing that like north is opposite to south and like the shape of a programming language. It's not good for things like, I don't know, who are you? Right? Like one of the worst experiences I've ever had is somebody like asking Gemini to go make a speaker's bio about me. They don't know who I am. I'm not that important. But like, and so it just hallucinated a bunch of stuff about me and then just, oh, can you go check this? And I like wanted to barf. But yeah, the underlying tools are just so very different in the way that they work that I actually have some trouble like structuring how to talk about them because it's kind of like, it's the elephant, right? Like I'm over here looking at a very small part of the thing and trying to encapsulate enough of the whole to like make it make sense. It's weird. It's hard not to go in circles.
So we touched a little bit earlier on how essentially the mechanism that these things are working through is language, right? Mm-hmm. So one best practice that kind of occurs to me coming out of that is you essentially want to get things into language. You want to get things into words wherever possible. Because that's both readable as a source by the LLMs and interpretable by the LLMs, right? So if you have something in words, if you have described something in words, then the LLM can work with it. These tools are also pretty good at putting things into words at this point. If you have audio, then it can transcribe that. If you have...
That's not the model. Those are on top of the model. That's getting back into like the app model distinction thing. Like I'm sure some models have that built in, but like if you go do that with Gemini, actually no, Gemini I think has changed it, but like if you've done that with Claude, it'll go record it on your local device, run a different process to do speech to text, and then feed that to the model.
Right.
Like feed that to the app.
Okay. So we might be getting bogged down a little bit there in layers of that.
Well, it's important. And like we can get into it, but please, like, so your question.
So what you want to do here is you want to try to get things into words where you can, so that this is something that you can interact with in future as text. That if you are doing something now, you either want it in, structured data in some way that you can read it into an LLM, or the easy option is to get it into LLM readable text so that you can then manipulate it in the future through LLM, so that you can summarize it, so that you can say, hey, remember that meeting that we had 3 weeks ago that had these action items, return to me the status of these action items within the context of the files that you're now looking at. How do these interact? You want to put things in a way that you can then operate like to like in text. And that's not all that hard to do. If you have an email job, you're already operating in a text environment, right? Like Ed is chuckling because I think he's had some occasional struggles with that.
Oh yeah.
With that translation.
You're not wrong though. The reason I'm a little picky about it is because it turns out large language models can actually quote unquote read things that are not words. And this is a fascinating disaster of an area in ways. Like this is how multimodal AI works, right? If you upload an image, it is not describing that image as words and putting it into the robot. It is turning it into those vectors I was talking about earlier and just going from there, which is a deeply weird thing to think about because like it's causing some like, what is this really in my head when I think about that? Basically you shouldn't try to be philosophical about this stuff. It'll hurt. But essentially, like if you think about the math, the vectors that I'm talking about as conceptual rather than pointing at a real thing, I think it helps to understand that part. The concept of 5 is why these things are not talking about the actual 5, or the concept of strawberry means that you can't figure out how many R's are in the word strawberry because it's not thinking about words. But going back to what you were saying, yes, like the tricky part is connectivity. The tricky part is making these things legible. Legibility is an ongoing struggle at basically every company I've ever seen.
Right. I mean, that's the struggle with trying to figure out how to document things, trying to figure out how to transfer information from one silo to another, trying to figure out how to pass on capabilities within the context of institutional memory. Like these are problems that existed long before LLMs and were big problems long before LLMs.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that we keep talking about fixing them for the robot, but why didn't we fix them for the human beings behind it? And I think that's, honestly, this is one of the things I'm most excited about, because if these things all just suddenly snapped out of existence tomorrow, I might still be able to find something in a wiki, which is honestly going to be a novel experience at any job I've ever had. But like one of the things that you end up doing a lot with these tools, and we're going to have to speak in generalities, because like, do you have Gemini at work? Then hopefully it's plugged into your Google Workspace, and hopefully they haven't, like they have at my job, set it up so I can't actually pull some documents into the large language model that I might need for reasons, right? Or I can't have it look at my email. Instead, I'm back to copying and pasting. But one of the things that you can get, and this is why tools like Cloud Code appeal to me at least, is if the thing has an API, if the thing has a way to have a computer talk to it, then you can just plug the LLM into the other end of it, right? Like a web search is an API. There's a computer over here that's waiting for a query that is shaped like this, and it gives back, like these are the results I found. Well, what if you plug that into a Jira? What if you plug that into a SharePoint, right? Like what if you plug that into just a thing where your company writes stuff down? What if you gave it access to your calendar, right? Like there's a lot of interesting and, to my mind, useful things around that space. That's probably one of the first places to look. Like the tough thing is that the initial question you asked, Propter, was, what should I be doing with this? And my answer is, I don't know. I'm not you, right? Like I don't, for example, use it to summarize Slack channels. I read the Slack channels because it's valuable to me. But like there might be some information trawling out there in some Slack channel that I wouldn't be in all the time, that by reading it, I would have to go read that particular channel at the right time to get that. And yeah, this is kind of a search problem, but what else is in there, right? Like catch me up on this is a useful tool in Slack, even though like a lot of people dunk on it for being in Slack, but I actually think it can be useful, and I've seen people do a good job of it. Things like document, where we start to get into some weird areas is the slop side of things, and we probably should at least touch on that. But like document summarization, when the document is well formed and actually like written by a person and doesn't suck, is really valuable if it's something that's like outside of your everyday, day to day. Are you going to spend half an hour reading this thing that you only need one fact from? Probably not. And these are little uses, right? Like these are more like consumptive uses. But then the creative, I don't want to say generative, because I think leaving it to the robot to do things causes a mess, as we talked about. But then like if you can give it a structure, you can then start to give it information that fits that structure. For example, one of the things I do sometimes is I write product requirement docs. I have a structure for how I want that to look. And what I do is I pick up my phone, I press the record button, and I record a voice memo that might be me talking for 5 minutes, might talk longer than that. And then I just hand it to the model, like I paste in the text, and I say, what's missing?
Right.
Ask me questions. What sucks? Right? Like, how do we make this better? How do we make this more rigorous? And frankly, they do a pretty good job. Gemini, which we use at work, not as good. Claude, I think, is excellent at this. But by doing that, I very quickly end up with a document that is 1, regular, 2, my thoughts, and 3, better than the original thoughts I put in.
Right. I mean, it's better organized, and you have some coverage for where there are gaps because you've just effectively gone through and looked for it, right?
Yeah,
like
it's really, really good at telling you your fly's unzipped.
And that's an extremely useful functionality, that particularly when you're talking about input device like the human voice, people wander in conversations. They're all over the place. They repeat themselves. They go forward, they go back, they skip rows. It's useful to have a summarizing machine that can turn that into something structured.
Summarizing and organizing are like the top thing to start with, I think. Figuring out how to do that personally is difficult as opposed to professionally, at least in like email job type things. I can do it personally, but that's because I blog. I am unhealthy. Like don't be like that, right? But there's definitely interesting places if you need to pick up information and move it around. And I know that sounds super vague, but like that's actually the exciting part, at least to me, right? Like
right.
I don't look at these as word machines. I look at these as concept machines. And that goes back to the original description that I gave, right? Like it's a continuously sliding scale of abstraction. Sometimes I don't need to know what is in that box that is labeled code, right? Like literally, I don't mean like some piece of code. I mean, this is just a program. I don't care how it works. I just want to have you go look at it and write me something that uses it, right? Like, because I might only need it for 5 minutes. I might not be putting it into production. I might not really care, right? Like if I'm just trying to get an answer out of something, That's a lot different than if I'm going to give it to 100,000 people to use.
A good analogy is the bad intern or the new intern who doesn't have any skills yet, and you say, go figure this thing out for me in Excel. You don't know how Excel.exe operates, and you don't need to, right? It runs, right? And the intern can shepherd the data around, and the LLM's a dumb intern. Not dumb, just inexperienced.
Some of them are dumb. The interesting thing...
I was trying to be nice to the intern.
Yes. I meant the model, but okay. One of the interesting things is that, so a lot of people got really mad, myself included, when Gemini started putting, or when Google started putting Gemini in every Google Workspace account, right? And I still think it sucks for things like email, but it turns out it's excellent at Google Sheets. Like, and they don't use a particularly smart model in there. It is actually a fairly dumb one. But like, if you explain what transform you want to actually happen in Google Sheets, it just goes and does it. And like, the hit rate is nearly perfect. It's disgusting. I have spent way too much time being good at spreadsheets to have it erase me like this. But like, it just happened. I have not written a formula in a spreadsheet in like 6 months. And my life is better for it because I can just tell it to do it and go walk the dog.
See, it's interesting, like how the different level of domain with this stuff goes, because there is no plausible way that an LLM could get faster at doing what I do in spreadsheets than I do, right? Because I'm doing it literally all day long. It's like my whole thing, and I'm quickly switching back and forth between sheets, and I'm using stuff that I've been doing for 10 years, and they're prompting it with just coming up with the prompt to get exactly what I know how to do with my own two fingers. It's not going to be a thing. Now, there are other applications where it's a novel thing or a data set that doesn't fit in a spreadsheet, or it's something that Excel's just not really equipped well to do, which is a lot of things, right? Where actually, no, having it go write some Python for me is a huge time saver. Massive, because I don't have the Python knowledge necessary to write out the functions necessary to do what I want to do with the Python, right? I know enough to know roughly how I want it to put it together, but in terms of the actual lines of code, no, it's going to be way, way faster for it to write them for me. But in Excel, where I am an absolute expert, at least in the sort of implementations I use it for, it's not faster to prompt. It's not. Now, I very much doubt, based on what I know about your bio, Ed, that you are spending literally all day, every day in Excel writing Excel formulas, right?
No, but I did spend 30 years writing code, and it's better at writing code than I am.
Depending on the length of the code you're talking about, right? Like Excel formulas, you're talking about what, like a named range or a couple different input cells, and you're talking about like 3 or 4 different functions. Maybe if you're doing something more complicated than that, you should be doing Excel to begin with.
Oh,
right?
See, that's where we differ. I do like pervert stuff in Excel. I used to use Excel I used to use the Excel or Google Sheets as the back end for my video mixer when I was a Twitch streamer. I'm doing disastrous things.
You should be in prison. Why are you not in prison?
Like, for what you're describing, absolutely. I'm over here being like, I have nested index statements.
So
type of disasters.
I mean, I think this speaks to one of the other
bad. That's real bad.
That reminds me of I don't know if I've ever told you guys this story. So when I took over my job, I was cleaning up a whole bunch of our old programs and writing business rules because we didn't have them at the time, writing documentation. And I had to go and review a whole bunch of old code in SAS, and it was all written in ProcSQL. The guy who had the code before me was maintaining it, like chewing gum and duct tape, but by God, he could get it to run. It was written by somebody else like 15 years earlier. And they had written like 5 nested case whens in this one program, except I don't think they really understood the syntax.
Oh, no.
So when you got to the end of the program, they had to put end like 6 times.
And then yep.
Yes.
just keep putting in ends until it lets you go.
And so I pulled this up, and I'm sitting there with my two coworkers, and I see the end, and I started singing it in the Batman song voice.
And then your coworkers left.
Yes.
So that actually did prompt something that some folks and I were talking about earlier. Maybe an interesting lens is like, where are these things going to go in like the next couple years as far as like your email job? I think there's some interesting things there, like what to expect when you're expecting more LLM bullshit. So there are people of a certain age, and some of them are on Blue Sky because 38-year-olds are just old enough for this, who might remember Access,
Sure.
Microsoft Access, or Apple's, was it Apple's? It was Claris. I don't remember if it was Apple, but FileMaker, right? Like this was back when, way back, far before I was touching a computer. I wasn't even a sperm yet. They had quote unquote databases that ran on like an Apple II, right? Like you'd build an application that had a dedicated chunk of data that you could just interact with on that computer, and you better hope you don't lose your diskettes. And then this graduated to an actual real database, right? Microsoft Access was a real database, sort of. But then you could put forms on it, right? Like you could have input forms, and sometimes you could even have them work over a network. You could have multiple people talking to the same database, like looking at your client stuff, Salesforce before Salesforce type stuff. And I think that's actually where you're going to see a lot of this stuff, and especially for like folks like Proctor, right? Like we haven't really talked about it, but you knocked out a browser extension. I have still never written a browser extension in my life, but you knocked one out for Blue Sky timed mutes the other day, and it's pretty good. I looked at it. I was like, yeah, this is very plausible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We might talk about this more another week, depending on whether or not people are interested in going into it. But like, because I do want to kind of get into how, as someone who doesn't have a great deal of technical sophistication in this area, you can use these things. Like, and you know, I feel the LinkedIn in my voice when I say that, right? Like this is obviously bullshit, and yet at the same time, like, I'm not trying to sell you a fucking application. I'm not trying to sell you a startup here. Like this is stuff that is useful to me because it is now accessible to me.
The tinkering mechanic is a proud American tradition, sir. I mean, like, it doesn't help. It's not like you don't have to sell it.
No, you don't.
You can just go
like,
in your proverbial garage and tinker. Like,
yeah, right. It's absolutely the way you do this. Like, I have, I don't know, about 25 people using the tools that I've built in Cloud Code right now, and I built them all to make my blog, right? Like, my blog is the most over-engineered piece of shit I've ever seen, but like, it's awesome, right? We were talking about this in the chat, right? Like, I was bored, so I built a podcast serving platform, right? We pay $12 a month for Podbean. What if we never had to pay for it again, right? Like, we could do that. And like, mine stitches together multiple files to make a single like export people can download. Mine automatically gets transcripts. We have to go punch it into a thing to make that happen, right? Like, I built the thing I wanted instead of just like what somebody had. And I think that's actually what you're probably going to see earliest with a lot of these tools. Like, it was hard a year ago. It was hard 9 months ago for somebody who wasn't at least some flavor of programmer to build something that didn't fall apart on its own, right? I don't think that, Proctor, you would have been able to write that extension with Claude 3.5.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't have worked. Like, I could get good results out of it, but I get good results out of it by going through like really arcane and persistent design steps ahead of time, and then reviewing it exhaustively, and then kicking it off to go do the work. Opus just kind of does stuff. And like, I don't think it's good enough to build something by itself that you could like sustain as a company. It's not that. You can build things with it. I do. But like, by itself in that sort of self-piloting mode, it's not there. And I don't know if it ever will be. I have certainly been surprised enough in the last year that I'm not going to say it's not. But like, I also, you know, like, RAM is expensive, right? Like, the amount of context that you get in a model is only so much. At some point, you need to do what's called context engineering around it, which is like, how do you get information into the thing seamlessly and quickly? And that's a lot of work, and that's really hard. But at the same time, like, you don't need that much context to build an application that pokes like your local SharePoint and like writes you a report, right? Like, you just don't. Or like, one of the places I think you're going to see a ton of this is Salesforce, right?
Yep.
No one wants to write Apex. Apex is terrible, but like, the robot doesn't know it's terrible. So all of these people who have SharePoint are going to probably be seeing a lot of that. And honestly, it's probably going to be fine. Like, is it going to be fast? Maybe not. It's probably going to be faster than I'd write. But like, it's cool because there's a lot of tedium to automate.
Right.
And I think what a lot of people are worried about, and in many cases justifiably, is that like, it's going to look to decision makers as if this is stuff that can replace a human knowledge worker. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. There are going to be companies that make that bet, and I think most of them are going to get smoked. But it's going to really suck in the interim for the people whose jobs get vaporized by hubris. But on the flip side, I think there are substantial benefits in terms of like the automation side of this. A friend of mine said that I'm weird because I look at it as just another automation tool. And I kind of vacillate between that and the weird philosophical, what if you can teach it to have a framework that makes its own stuff, right? Because I think that's possible. We're not there yet. But like, the automation side is just what everyone could be doing already. You know, tons of people learn just enough Python or just enough Google Sheets or Excel to automate some pain in the ass in their job. And now that's way easier. And it's a lot easier to do it in like a connected fashion where it can go talk to these other things that have historically been a pain to access.
The pound of flesh that Ed has extracted from all of us for getting to talk about college football once again has been this most recent segment.
You guys asked.
I think we will come back to this because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here. And I think that thinking about LLMs and AI in practical ways and non-hyperbolic ways is probably something a lot of people who are being exposed to these tools could use. So we will absolutely return to this as sort of a recurring segment of sorts. And you know, I think it was a great conversation. So Ed, thank you for wearing out your voice box tonight, and thank you to everyone who listened and somehow made it to this point of the episode. And if you have a chance, we would love to have you rate and review the podcast wherever you listen to it. For Normal Men in Charlotte, I'm George.
In DC, I'm Proctor.
In Outer Florida, I'm Low Tech Speedrun Enjoyer.
And in Boston, I'm Ed. George forgot to say, stay normal, y'all.